I'm so excited for my daddy's podcast, and it's going to start right now.
Welcome back to the Lessons for Success show. I'm your host, Adam Wardlaw, a middle school science teacher and a high school football coach here in the great state of South Carolina. I just want to thank everybody that's been supporting the show so far. Lessons for Success has now been heard in over 5 countries and over 22 states here in America. Hopefully, you've all gained some valuable insight from our guests so far on the show. Remember that new episodes come out every Sunday, and the show is available everywhere where podcasts can be found. Keep up with the show on our social media accounts at L4S Show or use the hashtag L4S Show. Again, that's the number 4. You can also send in messages to the show by downloading the Anchor app. Feel free to send in any questions or comments related to the show so it can be featured in future episodes of the podcast.
Daddy, who's the guest on your podcast this week?
This week's guest is Angus Reid. Angus is a former professional football player in the Canadian Football League. Angus has been featured on multiple TEDx talks and is the author of Thank You Coach, a story of the lasting impact that great coaching and leadership can have on a person, told from Angus's own point of view. You can follow Angus on Twitter at AngusReid64. Enjoy.
My name's Angus Reid. I am a retired professional football player. I played 13 years professionally in the Canadian Football League in Canada. I'm a Canadian. I grew up in Vancouver, which is about 2.5 hours north of Seattle. And I got to do I'd say 2 rare things. Live my childhood dream of being a pro football player and got to do it in my hometown, which I think makes it extra special. I was able to play in front of my family and close friends for my entire career, which really was a double blessing right there. I retired in 2014, but my story was kind of a long shot that made it. We all can kind of know that pro sports is generally reserved for the elite athletes of the world, and to play 13 years at a grueling sport like football is usually reserved for the truly elite and gifted. And I have no problem saying that is not me. I wasn't a superior in physical traits and skills. I was one of those kids that just sort of was stubborn, was crazy enough to have ambitious dreams and stubborn enough to pursue them till I made it happen. So that's why I speak so much today to schools and businesses all around North America on kind of what it really takes to make it, whether you have the resources or natural physical skills or not, and speaking more on the mental side and how you make choices and decisions and how you commit to something and the character that gets built around doing all the things that it really takes on a daily basis to make yourself into success. And I was fortunate to have amazing coaches, mentors, and friends all along the way, but my story is really about kind of a long shot kid that took a long shot dream and just sort of figured out with a lot of help how to make things happen and how to get something that you want in life. And so that's kind of where I got to. And we can, I don't know, we're going to kind of do a conversation here to kind of peel me back to the beginning, or what do you want to do here, Adam?
I'd love to just know, there's a ton of coaches that listen, teachers that listen, and then students as well. And so, the audience for the show, there's this, you can talk about it from either side. What it was like you being that mentee and learning and what you learned. And then now on the reverse side, maybe the benefits you see of being a mentor as well. I would just love to kind of hear your perspectives on both.
Sure. Well, let's start when I was a youngster. I was really, really fortunate to have a good family upbringing. So I'm one of 6 kids. I'm the youngest of 5 boys, and we have a younger sister. So I had 4 older brothers. So I don't know if people think that was good or bad, but it was great for me. My older brothers were my heroes. For the parents listening, this will give you a little dose of reality. My mom had 4 under the age of 3. So do the math on that. Yes, there were some twins there, but there was a clump of 4 boys, and then there was 6 years to me and then 6 years to my little sister. So I really was their younger brother. And being 6 years older than me, that clump, I just kind of followed them around, and I was really fortunate to have, as I call it, heroes in my own home. And my brothers all played sports, every sport, whatever season it was at school time. They played basketball, soccer, eventually football, track, whatever was going on, they were involved, busy. And as a youngster, I couldn't have been more fortunate to have grown up in an environment where every moment of my life was being dragged around from basketball tournament to basketball tournament to football game to soccer game, because we had one car and my mom had to take me everywhere. So all I knew growing up was going to sporting events and cheering on my brothers. And all I really envisioned was trying to be just like them. So I'm an impressionable person, and I was fortunate that my impressions were of that of sports and having that great sort of standard of working hard and playing and being part of a team. That was my daily existence. And so I wanted to do that. And so I was around it. And when I got to high school, what happened, my first year of high school, I got really sick. And it's a really, really long story, but I had a ruptured appendix that I decided not to tell my parents about because I thought I had a bad stomach ache. And I thought my older brothers would call me a wimp for complaining about a bad stomach ache. But after 6 days of a ruptured appendix, it became to the point there was no way of hiding it. And that 6 days was longer than I think most people would ever survive. And I think I set the hospital record in my province here for the longest blown appendix without dying, which isn't a record you want to hold. But I really should have died. And it's a very long story, but I was in the hospital for about 6 weeks. I was raised Catholic, and we got to the point where I had my last rites read. They were preparing for me to die. And when I think I was 13, and when that's happening, you get flooded with some crazy emotions of sort of fear and then helplessness and despair. And eventually at some point I didn't think I didn't have any fight left. I mean, it was 6 weeks of just kind of withering away in a hospital bed. And there was a defining moment in my life there where my mom would always sit with me through the nighttime at the hospital, because it was always quiet and dark and scary to just sit there, because I never slept. And, tubes in my nose and tubes in my stomach, and you just lie there and you're just kind of withering away and not thinking you're going to make it through. And it was the middle of the night, about 6 weeks in, and I had had enough. I literally had no fight left in me. And I leaned over to my mom, and it was dark and quiet, and with little energy in my voice, I just wanted to tell her that I loved her, and I said goodbye. I said, I don't have it in me anymore. I'm going to close my eyes and I'm going to die. And I remember telling her that. And to the moms listening, I don't know what you would do if your son did that, but my mom's tough. And she stood up and looked me dead in the eye, and she said, get up right now. And I'll never forget this, Adam. I couldn't get up. I hadn't been up in weeks. My muscle had atrophied. I was just sort of lying there. And I remember telling her, I can't. And she said, okay, well, she's put her arm under my kind of head to kind of scoop me. And she said, then you lean on me. We're getting up right now, and we're going to go for a walk. And I couldn't walk. Well, I didn't think I could. I hadn't moved in a long time. I was exhausted, tired, and really, really depleted of all energy. And in the hospital, when you get out of bed, you're not supposed to. All these bells and whistles go off, and nurses come running in. And I'll never forget my mom looking at them saying, just leave us alone, taking my son walking. And she dragged me around the hospital floor that night, to the hallway, shall I say. And I was just leaning on her, and she would not let me quit. She would not let me close my eyes, because she knew I was on the verge of giving up on the most important thing in the world, which was myself, which was my life at the time. I was going to quit, and she didn't let that happen. And she made sure that I fought through that lowest point, and she dragged me through the hallways till the sun came up. And it's always darkest before the dawn. And what was fascinating was, because I didn't quit in that moment, and I don't know how this played out, medically speaking, but within 3 days after that, I was home. I got better. I was getting better, and I erased things back. And I don't know details why, but the two most powerful things I took from that I've never forgotten was, one, you never, ever, ever give up on yourself. You never do that. I never forgot that moment, and I never quit on myself ever again. And two, the importance of having people in your life that care about you and that actually know what matters most to you. Because I learned right then, people have friends, and people have people around them that they like to have around them, and that they care about them. But we don't always share with them what matters most to us. Maybe we're scared to let them know what we really want to become, or maybe we're embarrassed of things that matter most. But it's unfair to them as your friends to not let them know what matters most and then ask them to be there for you. And I learned at that moment that my mom knew, obviously, was what mattered most was my life, but how can people help you? And how can people support you? And how can people pull you through that darkest moment if they have no idea what really matters to you? If they have no idea what you want to become in life? And when I speak to kids now, we talk about dreams and goals and things they want to become. And I ask them how many have shared that with all their friends. And, and I know, Adam, a lot of them don't. And a lot of them won't tell their friends what they really want to do with life and what matters most to them, who they really want to become, for all the various reasons of maybe they're a little bit embarrassed, or they're scared of the judgment their friends might have, or they might think differently of them, or they'll tell them that they'll never make that. And on the one hand, how will you ever accomplish something if you can't even speak about it? But on the deeper level, what I learned from my mom that night was, you're going to need a lot of help in life. You need support. And how can people properly support you and properly be your friends if they never know what matters most? And I learned there, again, never quit on myself. And 2, make sure you surround yourself with people that care about you and that actually know the things that matter most to you, so they can support you properly. And so I went back to school, and that year was kind of a write-off because I missed so many weeks and I was kind of sick and unhealthy, but I was really, really lost. I didn't play any sports that year. I mean, spent most of the fall in the hospital. And I was a skinny, weak kid now that used to be this big, very confident kid through elementary, because I had these great older brothers. They were all gone now. They'd moved on from high school, and it was just me there, kind of left with little confidence. Wasn't a big, strong guy anymore. That sickness really zapped a lot out of me. And I kind of was lost. In 9th grade, I didn't play any sports. 10th grade, I didn't play any sports. I wasn't going to quit on myself, but I had lost the drive to be something. And I just didn't have it. And it's shocking to me. If you don't have something that drives you to move forward, you just sort of puddle through. And I wasn't going to quit on myself, but I just had lost the shall we say, the confidence to want to pursue something. And I gave a TEDx talk a few years ago on why we need high school football. And what changed my life was when the coach came through the hallway, like he did all the time, I think, trying to recruit players, and came up and said, "Look, Angus, why don't you come out and play ball?" And now my brothers were good players. So I think he knew who I was from my family, but that invitation changed everything for me. And I thought, wow, this person thinks I could be good. And I'm sure he said that to everybody, but that wasn't the point. It was the point that it triggered something in me that I loved sports growing up as a kid, but I'd lost all confidence in myself with that sickness. And his offer ignited a little spark in me and gave me an easy in, because I was being invited. I didn't have to show up and try to ask to come in. He offered. That's a powerful thing for coaches to go to our youth that maybe look marginalized or look a little less confident, and invite them into something. Because a lot of kids want to, but they're too scared to have the guts to go, maybe I can do something I've never done before. It takes a courageous person to do that. But a coach can reach out and say, I think you do wonderful. And that is a powerful message from a person in a position of authority, of respect, like the head coach, walking around and people saying, I think you'd be great. And that changed my life. I thought, okay, let's do this. And talked to my parents, and I said, I'm going to go play football. And they were so happy. I was excited to do something finally again. And that's where, I talk to youth all the time. You got to have something. I learned a long time ago, I think the 3 most important things in life are, you need someone to love, and someone to love you, shall we say, and something to do, and something to look forward to. And you need something to do, and usually that something to do adds something to look forward to doing more. So I want to go play football. And I don't know if there's any magic in the sport of football any more than there's magic in any other sport or any other activity. The magic is in an activity that you're going to dedicate yourself to doing. And now you're going to allow yourself to commit to a challenge, to getting yourself involved in pursuing becoming better, because you're doing something. And the reason I love football is because it doesn't say no to people. You bring them all out, and now you're going to have something to do. And if you buy into it and you go all in, it's going to challenge you. It's going to be difficult, but you're going to be surrounded by like-minded people that are all in that same challenging, difficult world together, and you're going to grow. and you're going to learn that you can do more than you ever thought you could. And the more you do, the more you get challenged, and the more you keep going. And you lose on the way, but you are doing something now that you have chosen to engage in, and that's a powerful thing. And so off I went to football, and I learned I'm going to commit to this. I'm going to do it. And then I learned a very powerful thing that shaped the rest of my life upon my first, shall we say, first 2 or 3 days of senior football, heading into the 11th grade. I'd never played the sport before, and off I come. And I knew the sport growing up watching, but as we all know, big difference between watching a lot of football and knowing how to play. And you show up the senior year or senior team, and my school had a good program. I mean, they put out pro players. It wasn't a Mickey Mouse program. This was real deal. And I rolled into grade 11, never playing a sport. And I was, again, I'm not a physical freak. I might have been, 5'11", 185 pounds, and they put me on the line. Here I am, very, very nothing impressive. And I roll out, and I'm not playing. I'm a deep backup. And that's where I realized what matters most in life is not the situation you find yourself in. It's how do you mentally respond to it. Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of us hope everything works out, and when it doesn't, they give up, they quit, or they complain. And, I wanted to play football. So I show up, and I'm not going to play because why would I? Why would I be good at something I'd never done before? Why would I be good at something I'm not naturally, exceptionally gifted at? There would be no reason to. The question is, how do you respond to that reality? How do you respond? And I was fortunate enough to, have parents and have common sense that I'm never going to quit on myself because I'd learned that lesson in the hospital. And this is what I want to do. I'm going to commit to it. And I told my friends and family, this is what I want to do now. I want to play. So they were able to support me, and I was able to have open dialogue to this issue that I'm never going to get on the field here. This sucks. And nobody wants to do things that aren't fun. So the question is, what do you do? And I remember then going back to my coach saying, Coach, but I want to play. And he said, yeah, no, of course, but it's a competitive environment. We have really good players, and you're a little bit behind. It's going to take a while for you to learn this game, Angus. And he didn't have the time to personally coach me up. There was a reality at play here. It was just the truth, and I can go out there and take my time on the practice roster on the scout team and work your way up. But I said, look, I want to play. What can I do? And I remember then thinking, what's the difference in life is not what you're given. It's the response you have when life challenges you. And I looked at people that things didn't work out for. They generally responded by complaining, giving up, blaming, or whatever. And my response was, what can I do? Mm-hmm. No, what can't I do? And I remember Coach said, well, you got to learn the game. I said, okay. And I'm dating myself here. I was in high school pre-internet. Yes, I'm that old now. It was 1992. So just before, but pre-internet. So the day, I hadn't learned the magic of going on YouTube and learning, which I don't think is always the greatest way to do it. But I said, okay, Coach, give me everything you've got on what I need to learn. And back then it was books and VHS tapes, those magical things, right, on techniques and drills for line play and fundamentals and concepts and all the stuff that most 15-year-olds would never read, never watch. They just sit around saying, well, I'm no good at this, and coach isn't going to coach me, so what am I supposed to do? Well, I did it. I could do that, so I did it. I wanted to play, and I needed to learn more about this position, about the sport. And I said, Coach, give me what you got. And he gave it to me. Didn't do it for me, but he gave it to me, and I did it. And, I had Saturday mornings and after school or before practice and before school and lunchtime. I had free moments where I had options to do what I wanted with life. And I chose to take that time to get better at what I needed to get better at because I'd committed to wanting to do something. I always looked at what could I do instead of complaining about what I couldn't or what I didn't have. I learned the game. And what's fascinating to me was, I entered grade 11, truthfully, not understanding the sport well enough to get on the field in high school. And when I retired in 2014 from the BC Lions, playing professional for 13 years, my coach called me the smartest football player he had ever coached. And I kind of laughed at that because all coaches in this sport always talk about football IQ and they have all these funny phrases. And I always thought, football IQ is not some gift. Nobody's born understanding football. This is learned knowledge. It wasn't some gift I had to understand a sport that man created. It was the decision to learn something that I didn't know because it's what I wanted to do. That's available to anybody. That didn't take any talent, any gift. It took that determination that I'm going to choose to do something instead of complaining about what I can't do. And I learned the sport, and that was a common theme through that year of my life. It was, okay, I'm learning it. What else do I got to do? And it wasn't strong enough yet, and I was getting pushed around. So that's when I decided I needed to start weight training. And it wasn't really till the 11th grade. And so I said, Coach, I need a program. I learned basic fundamentals. And here's the secret, everybody. I just did it every day forever. I just followed the program, the outline, and I just did it relentlessly, continuously, till the day I finished playing football. And when I came out of college my senior year, I was one of the strongest players in the country. I bench press almost 500 pounds and squat 700 pounds. And, like I'm some big freak strong guy. Well, I'm just a kid that committed to the process and did it again and again and again and again and again. It wasn't magic. That's what I could do. So that's what I did. Excuse me. And that story's continuous, conditioning and speed work. And eventually it was school. By the time I got into grade 12, I was playing very well. And I kept telling Coach, I'm going to make it. I'm doing everything possible. And he talked about grades. And that was a common story for a lot of guys I played with. They would have made it too, but they didn't have the grades. And I said, well, it obviously didn't matter that much to you because I didn't have good grades either. But I needed them to keep playing. So I did what I had to do, and I did the work in school because it was part of the process that needed to be done. And that was really what I learned that separated me for the rest of my career was, once you commit to something, you commit to everything that it takes, and you have the courage to face your reality and not hide from the things you're not good at or you don't like to do or you wish you were better at, but to face them head on and realize this is where I'm at. This is the truth, but this is where I want to go. This is the gap. And you do everything you can to fill that gap instead of just doing the stuff you like to do and avoiding the stuff you don't like to do or complaining about that you're not good at it. That's where you go. And you get better at what you need to get better at. And you do it to the very best of your ability. There's no guarantee how far you'll go in that chosen endeavor, but there is a guarantee that you have learned a skill that will transfer to everything you do in the rest of your life. You have the ability to commit to something, to see the truth of where you're at, to see the truth of where you need to be at, and to understand that most of that filling of that gap is putting in the work usually at things you don't like to do. But that's the difference. That's the difference. And that turns into, any career after sports, your marriage, your relationships. It's seeing the truth of who you want to become, where you're at, and filling that gap with the work that is required. It isn't always exciting. It doesn't make YouTube clips. It's not a highlight reel thing. It's that daily, consistent work at filling in what you need to do to get to where you want to get to that really separates, people that are talented and pretty good at things to people that not just find success, but generally can maintain sustained success over time. And here's the big thing that I've learned, can generally transfer that success to different avenues. We've all seen athletes that are just gifted, and they can play sports and they might go really far, all the way up to professionally and do very well. But I see very little transfer of being able to run a 4.340 or having a 43-inch vertical leap to really anything else in life. So that's good to have. But the things that are going to matter that hopefully sports teaches you at a young age is to deal with your own reality, see where you want to get to, and understanding the work that it requires to get there, and having the commitment and the character built to focusing on that work. Mm-hmm. And that, to me, is something that will carry you through everything. That's what life is, right? That's what life is seeing what you want to become, seeing where you're at, and having the commitment to never quit, to finding people that can support that reality because they know that reality, and then just putting in the work every day and constantly reassessing. And where coaching comes in, I think, is, I've been blessed to have great coaches, is that they can generally stay objective with where you're at, where we tend to lie to ourselves pretty good, right? Like we're pretty good at fooling ourselves, and we'll tell ourselves stories we want to hear to feel good right now. Or the opposite, we'll beat ourselves up too much because that's maybe how we're wired. But a good coach and a good mentor can generally give you objective feedback. And as long as they know clearly where you want to get to, they can help and make sure that you are staying on that road and not sort of clouding reality with your own emotional interpretations, which, as we know, can change from day to day. We feel good about ourselves, we feel bad about ourselves, and we overblow things. But a good coach can keep assessing and helping you see where you're really at, where you really need to be, and reminding you of how great you are becoming, or how great you are as a person, because you're willing to take on that worthy role of pursuing personal excellence. And that, to me, is a powerful place to be when you're someone that wants to do something, you're willing to put in the work, and you find a great coach, a great mentor that will help instruct and guide and continuously converse with you and keep you on that path.
Well, it's so important that in your case, you were always willing to accept that feedback from from the people who were kind of overseeing it, whether it's, when you're on your deathbed in the hospital. I mean, you were accepting what your mom was telling you to do when you were, riding the pine in your 11th grade year, and you had to accept that feedback from the coach that you just got to get better. People have got to be willing to face that, different opinion, or an opinion that isn't what they want to hear, or the easy opinion. And just kind of switching gears here to this whole idea of mentorship, because I know it's something that you speak a lot about, and it's something that your book, Thank You, Coach, really does a great job of doing, and just kind of sharing your stories and how your mentors are what helped you get to this successful career as a pro athlete and beyond. What was that process like? At what point did you realize that you wanted to kind of create this book where you kind of share these ideas? Well, I'm really curious about that whole process.
Sure. Well, the Thank You, Coach book is a specific story about my positional coach that I had for 11 of my 13 pro seasons, my offensive line coach, Dan DeRazio. I mean, it's a bigger thank you to all coaches, and it's a reminder to all, but the book is a very specific story of our relationship. And I think I was able to write it because I had the unique experience that I think very few athletes, or maybe very few people, ever have, where I had the same coach for 11 straight years. I mean, that's got to be really hard to find anywhere in any sport or walk of life in today's world, to have the same direct mentor coach for 11 consecutive seasons or years, shall you say. And what was also interesting is that I'm talking about a mentor that shaped me as a human from a professional sports world, where most of the time you look at professional sports and it's less personal relationship, less mentor, more business. Usually in the professional world, you're there to help the team win. If you can't help the team win, you're gone. And it's kind of clinical, it's kind of cold, and it's less about connecting with people, or generally isn't, because the turnover is high, and it's a very results-based business, and it still is. But my coach was, why I wanted to write about him was to thank him and to share how he did things, I think, differently, or shall I say, he did things that I think separated him from other coaches that maybe didn't connect as well, or weren't able to get maximal ability out of their players. And what Coach Dan did was, this is at the professional level now, he connected with you as a person before he tried to coach you as a player. And that may sound simple, but that gets lost a lot. And I know it even gets lost out in the high school world now, where winning is so important and performance matters so much. Everybody focuses on improved techniques and schemes and better ways to run the offense, and different formations are going to win. And then people become pieces within this scheme, and winning is your reward as a player for being a part of this system. And that's what matters. And that's great and all, but you want to get the most out of a person. You want to connect with them on an individual level. And when I first met Dan, it was my third year pro when we had a full coaching staff change, and I was struggling to make it as a pro athlete. Grinded for my first 2 years. I made it to the pros, but I didn't know if I was really going to make a career out of it. I was bouncing around on the practice roster my first year, barely made the team my second year. And then my third year with the BC Lions, we got a full staff change, and I get this new coach. And my first meeting with Coach Dan was different than most of my first meetings with other coaches, where generally you meet them in their office, and particularly at the pro level, then they outline, how they coach, and here's the system, and here's our expectations and demands, and they sort of outline everything right off the bat. And that's fine. With Dan, our first meeting was an invitation to go to lunch away from the facility, very casual. And he spent that first, hour and a half, let's say, just giving me the floor to speak and asking very open-ended questions to allow me, or allow him to learn about me. Similar to what you had done, asked about my childhood, my family, what I like to do, hobbies, friends, movies, anything that I wanted to speak on. He wanted to know about, because he wanted to get to know who I was, what made me tick, and what I valued. And brilliantly, I didn't really see it till later in life that he was trying to understand me as a person, so he could know what kind of coach I needed. I needed him. What kind of coach I needed him to be the best player I could be. And I thought that was so different than almost so many coaches I'd been around, where they let you know how they do things, and your job as a player was to come to them. Dan realized to be the best coach possible, he needed to learn who his players were as people, and he went to each of us individually and met us on our level to pull us to the standard that mattered. And that was fascinating. And you got to realize this is pro football, where it's cutthroat business, and player turnover is high. I mean, we had new guys coming in every week, and each time he'd still take the time to do his best to get to know the person, so he could ideally coach each of them the way they need to be coached, still within the scheme of coaching a game, which is very, very hard to do. And I learned from him that your standards have to be objective. He outlined very clearly what a winning performance looked like, and how we would grade a winning performance, and here were the parameters that equaled a positive grade for a block or a negative play for a block. It was very clear, and it wasn't debatable, and this wasn't going to be a different standard for me as it was for a different player. This is what winning is. This is excellence. But he would coach subjectively. He knew that I mechanically had different strengths and weaknesses than I'm barely 6'1", and I was a stumpy 300 pounds with short little arms and not the biggest feet. I mean, I'm not your ideal lineman. I couldn't physically block this player the same way maybe one of our tackles who was 6'7", 340 pounds with massive wingspan could. And therefore, to expect me to do that would just set me up for failure. It wasn't, this is how we do everything. It's each player has strengths and weaknesses physically, emotionally, and mentally. And he needs to know each of those so he could coach us uniquely to our abilities, so we could all get to that same standard our way. And that was brilliant. I mean, you're talking pro sports where if you do the job or you don't, and he still said, you know what, my job as a coach is to maximize your ability as a player, and not to hold you accountable to things I know you can't do, and not to ask you to be somebody you are not. And so he was able to adapt coaching to each of us while still holding all of us to the exact same standard, which that seems like an incredible amount of effort. And it was, and it still is. But that to me is brilliant coaching. Mm-hmm. That to me is caring enough about the players you're coaching to realize what they need from you and not just demand what you need from them.
Well, and that translates to teaching, clear as day. Being able to, there's such a priority on test scores, just like in sports, there's a priority on winning and things like that, so many people just focus on drilling this information into their kids' heads, and it usually just has bad repercussions in the end. And you start to see this movement now of teachers treating their students like the people they are and the future citizens that they are, and trying to work through these solutions together. But it even, I feel like, translates beyond that. I mean, it's any kind of organization or system where you got people that are working with people to get a solution. You've got to be able to work with each other, know each other's strengths and weaknesses. And you're right, that is an amazing thing that you had, especially at the professional football level. Angus, I appreciate you giving me so much of your time this afternoon. One thing I like to do just to kind of cap off the interviews, and it could be something that we've already discussed, but if you just had to summarize real quick for the listening audience what a key to success is, or a couple keys to success, what would those be in your opinion?
I think having something that you're actually going to commit to, being very clear about what you want to become or what you want. I mean, I think life today is lived a lot on vague terms where people keep things vague for whatever reason. But I think clarification of what you're trying to do, and that'll help you eliminate anything that doesn't support that. So clarity of purpose, let's call it. Be very clear. And then finding out the truth about what that means, what it's going to take, and where you're at, and realizing the real gaps that exist so you can figure out what it's really going to take. And then to me, it's two more things where you adapt the mindset of focusing on what you can do about the reality, not complaining about what you can't, which sounds simple, but that's a game changer in mindset. That's the difference between winning and losing, and has nothing to do with talent. That's available to everybody right now. It's a mindset of always looking at what you can do in every situation, and not wasting 1 ounce of energy on complaining about what you can't. And then thirdly, it's the environment that you create for yourself. And I've always talked to the youth I speak to. I've broken it down into my thoughts of three types of people outside of family, okay? Because not everybody has the same family. So ideally, you have a good family structure. Maybe you do, maybe you don't, and that's not always up to you. But there's 3 things I think that you get to choose. And one is your friends. I mean, I'm going to call these your everyday friends. These people may or may not be on the same mission as you. They may or may not play the sport as you or do the activity you're pursuing. But these are the people that you'll spend everyday time with. And these are people that you will become more like in terms of your character, in terms of, are these people that are honest and truthful and helpful, because this will be who you'll be as a person. You want to make sure you're choosing people that you want to become more like just as a human being. Okay. And then there's the coaches and mentors that you either are lucky enough to stumble upon or you consciously seek out. Either way, when you find a good one, you choose to hang on to that person. And as you spoke about, be open to their truth, be open to their instruction, and give yourself over somewhat to their expertise and knowledge, because they only care about helping you. They're not your friends. So they're not trying to be cool with you in social settings. Their only interaction ideally with you is helping you to improve. That is a gift to have someone like that in your life. Hang on to that person dearly and be open to suggestions and the conversations they'll have with you. And then thirdly, I put this in a lot, and I call them super friends. These will be, because these kind of guys changed my life. I didn't have time to speak about these guys, but these will be friends that you choose that are generally specifically, or they would be specifically on the same mission as you, and they're probably a little bit ahead of you. So my example was, when I need to get bigger and stronger because I want to pursue football, there was 2 guys in my town that were a year older than me, and they didn't go to my school. They went to one of our kind of rival public schools. I went to a Catholic boys' school. They went to public schools in my city that, they were little local legends. These guys were machines, and they were on their way to go play college football, and their life was about training and diet and rest and football. And they as far as I could tell, they were professional athletes at 17. And I purposely found a way to get to know them. I went out of my way to meet them, and I pursued being near them because they were doing what I wanted to learn how to do. They were living the way I wanted to learn how to live to pursue that goal. And, they were ahead of me. So it was one of those situations where I could hang out with them if I could keep up. And they were forcing me to see what it took, and they were forcing me to keep being better. And that was 25 years ago. And these were 2 of my buddies that now, one of them, Mark Uyama, he's the head strength coach for the Minnesota Vikings now. And we were just kids from small town in Canada, right? And he goes, I'll be in the NFL one day. He was 5'7", 240-pound nose guard. I'm like, good luck with that. Went down and played junior college. He played at Northern State after that. But listen, he's in the NFL today. He's the head strength coach for the Minnesota Vikings. My other buddy was Greg Bierman. He was about 5'6", 160 pounds, and he's going to play pro football too. Yeah, sure you will. When he went down to junior college, they went down together, and then he had a full ride to New Mexico State, and he played 10 years in the Canadian Football League. And these guys were monsters. And today they're great friends of mine, and they continue to be inspirations to me. But, you find people that are going to make you keep up with them. And they're going to show you what it really, really takes. And that's scary for a lot of people because you don't get to be the big dog, and you don't want that. You want people that keep you hungry to chase. And you surround yourself in that kind of world where you have guys that are people around you that are good people on an everyday basis. You become a better person. You have mentors and coaches that will stay objective with you and be honest with you and truthful with you, and you open your ear to that. You'll never get too emotionally clouded and be able to lie to yourself. And you find super friends, you will continuously have to keep getting better. You won't be able to rest. And I think you make choices with that. You've created an environment with yourself that I'm not going to say you're going to make it, but I think you've given yourself the best chance. And that's about all you can do.
Angus, I appreciate your time so much. If anybody out there is listening, wanted to be keeping up with you or try to reach out to you in some way, whether it's on social media or whatever, is there any preferred outlet that you'd like to share where they can be following you? I know I follow you on Twitter, and he's a great follow, guys, if you ain't already following him. But if there's anything else you want to share, could you share that now, please?
Yeah, sure. Twitter's always good. I'm at Angus Reid, R-E-I-D, at Angus Reid 64. My website is angusreid64.com. My book, Thank You Coach, is out on Amazon right now. And I have my 2 TEDx talks out, which have done well. And that's where I'm at. I love this. I'm speaking all over North America at schools and businesses and having a great time meeting more people and just sharing the lessons I've been lucky enough to learn.
Daddy, I'm learning so much from this podcast.
I really enjoyed my conversation with Angus, and there are a ton of lessons to be learned from his story. Let's review this lesson for success. Angus shared that at an early age he learned what it was like to persevere through a grueling time, and that he would not have likely made it without the guidance and support from his mother. Angus shared that when you are open to objective criticism or support, you too can persevere through any difficult time. All too often, people only want to hear about things they do well rather than the hard truth. Angus shares that you must be clear about what you want to achieve in life, and then seek objective advice in order to help you improve your own practices. In Angus's own words, be clear about your purpose, then set up the environment around you to help you reach that goal. Well, that's it for this week's Lesson for Success. Be sure to interact with the show on Twitter and Instagram at L4S Show, mentioning us or using the hashtag L4S Show. Again, that's the number 4. Episodes will also be placed on the YouTube channel Lessons for Success Show. Download the Anchor app in order to send in messages to the show, and your questions and comments could be featured on future episodes. All of the episodes are available on Spotify and Apple Podcasts or anywhere else that podcasts can be found, so be sure to like, subscribe, and rate. Thank you again for listening to the Lessons for Success Show podcast.